Why is the job appealing to you? You're from Washington State. Why do you want to do this job?
So I'm really excited about the opportunity to be at Fairfax County Public Schools. The reputation of Fairfax County Public Schools is one that's traditionally been so strong. And I recognize that having these high expectations also requires high support. And that's work that I've made my life's work. I also know that we're at a turning point in public education as we come out of this pandemic, and the opportunity to work with a community that supports schools, a world-class staff, and students and families who care deeply about the quality of education is a real opportunity, I think, to reimagine what learning spaces can look like and what education for the future could be for our entire country. As we imagine the possibilities, we know that 65% of our students in Fairfax County Public Schools are currently preparing for careers that don't yet exist. And this is such a community that has supportive families, students, and staff. I think we can together imagine a fabulous future, not just for our students here, but a future that policymakers can take note of that might be a lighthouse for the rest of our country.
And there's been some recent changes. We have a new governor. Can you talk a little bit about, one of the biggest things was the email tip line. Can you talk a little bit about that? And, do you think that's a good idea? Do you think that some things need to change there?
I have not had an opportunity to meet the governor of Virginia yet, and coming from Washington, we don't have a tip line. I'm not entirely clear on the purpose of the tip line and would need to better understand the governor's intent prior to commenting on a tip line. I think in general, it's always a good idea to inspire behavior that brings all of us together, and remember that we have so much more in common than we have differences about. And so for me as a leader, I'm going to stay resolutely student-centered and make sure that any decision we make here is in the best interest and the health and safety as well as educationally for each and every one of our students, staff, and the families they go home to.
Yesterday, we heard some students wanted to march out over the process. Can you talk a little bit about that? How are you going to get students to get behind you and your decisions?
I am so excited to have an opportunity to meet with students. I've had an opportunity this morning at Garfield Elementary School to meet with some of our youngest learners in the division, and particularly our young Eagles. I think their learning capacity this morning, their excitement about learning is something that makes my heart beat strong. And I look forward to meeting our students who exercised their voice and agency by walking out yesterday and hearing what their concerns are and making sure that we together plan forward. Philosophically, together all things are possible.
Let's talk a little bit about getting out of this pandemic, or hopefully getting out of this pandemic, right? Learning loss, what are some things that you would do to kind of tackle learning loss among students, ones that didn't do so well online?
So I think that I'd like to continue to reframe that conversation. So many of our students had learning that we would never have anticipated as a result of the pandemic. We have students that have learned to be more flexible, to manage change, to critically think and problem solve and work together in ways we couldn't have imagined. So I think that we would be remiss if we don't recognize the great strides that our students made in many skills we don't traditionally assess. I think some of those skills actually are skills that are going to be very important as our students move forward. When you think about the more concrete skills, reading, mathematics, science, and so forth, and writing, I think that clearly our schools need to spend time and focus and energy, as do our students and families, in supporting continued growth. Over time, our students will get where they need to be. Children aren't widgets, and each student has always been on their own unique, personalized trajectory educationally. So I'm confident that with our world-class staff here in Fairfax County Public Schools, with our community support and resources and partnerships, our students are going to be just fine. They'll be thriving.
And do you believe in online learning? Do you think there's a way for that? Do you think people should, do you think that you can revamp that if we need to start quarantining again, hypothetically. Do you think that online learning could work?
I think that we today, as we think about 22nd century skills, need to recognize that learning happens in all types of spaces. I no longer think we can limit learning to brick and mortar classrooms. And I think that students would tell us that they learn on athletic fields and welding shops and apprenticeship programs, They learn on sport fields and concert hall stages. There are so many spaces for deep learning and the application of knowledge that for some students online and blended learning works fabulously. For our students who are going on to university, there are very rare university classes that aren't blended, that have some Canvas or some type of learning management system, discussion boards as part of their in-person learning. So I think we need to really shift and reframe our thinking to not a zero-sum conversation, but rather parts of many different modalities, because again, students have many different needs.